Starting in about 2004, we saw a series of books being released criticizing religion in general, including specific criticisms of the Christian faith. Authors of these books included Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, and Richard Dawkins. They achieved widespread fame and popularity and came to be known as the New Atheists. Whilst the movement appears to be waning now, I would argue that its effects are still being felt, not least in a tendency to criticize belief in God with an attitude of militancy, sneering derision, and moral certitude. In the years that followed, a number of writers defending theism emerged, although they didn't achieve the same level of notoriety. Among these, Eastern Orthodox philosopher and theologian David Bentley Hart has provided some of the clearest defenses of both theism and Christianity. He did so in his 2009 book, Atheist Delusions, as well as 2013's The Experience of God. In The Experience of God, he argues that if we understand how God is philosophically defined in the great religious traditions, we can see that the philosophical position of atheism is fundamentally irrational, or in his words, a superstition nurtured by an infantile wish to live in a world proportionate to one's own hopes or conceptual limitations. He levels his critique at what is often called naturalism and presents three main criticisms of it. Bentley Hart argues that naturalism, which has also been called materialism or physicalism, is the most consistent form of atheism. Naturalism is the position that nothing exists outside the physical order or nature. This obviously rules out the existence of the supernatural. In my experience, this is the most common form of atheism that you encounter in books by the new atheists, online, and in day-to-day life. It's common to hear people say that they believe that the physical order is all there is. Bentley Hart's first criticism of naturalism, showing it to be closer to magical thinking than a reasonably held belief, is that the naturalist's position, that nature is a closed, self-sustaining system, cannot be verified, either deductively or empirically, from within that closed system of nature. In case you're like me and find this type of philosophical language difficult to understand, I'm going to pause here and try to express the argument in more conversational language. This might lose some of the precision of the argument, but I think it's a good first step to understanding the gist. Theists, people who believe in God, believe that nature, the physical world around us that we can observe, is created and sustained by something outside of nature, namely God. Atheist naturalists, on the other hand, believe that the natural world is capable of creating and sustaining itself. Accordingly, they propose that belief in the existence of anything outside nature, anything extranatural or supernatural, is unnecessary and irrational. Both theists and atheistic naturalists hold a metaphysical position, a position about what is or isn't outside the natural world. But, as Bentley Hart argues, it is plainly impossible to find evidence for their belief that nothing exists outside of nature from our position within nature. So they have no evidence to support their metaphysical belief in naturalism. Therefore, this position is arbitrary and more of what Bentley Hart calls a guiding prejudice, rather than something they can back up with logic or experience. My very crude analogy, and I'm at risk of oversimplifying here, is this. You're sitting in a box with an atheistic naturalist friend. The box is closed and it's impossible to see out of it. You hold the belief that the box is being sustained by something outside the box. You think this is the floor. The atheistic naturalist says that you are gullible, irrational, and a believer in Santa Claus because you believe that anything exists outside the box. On the contrary, your friend argues, the fact that there is nothing inside the box that proves the existence of the floor indicates that the box is sustaining itself in midair. Before I risk causing confusion by oversimplifying, let's move on to Bentley Hart's second objection to naturalism. To understand this, we have to imagine, for the sake of argument, that nature is all that exists. Within this worldview, Human consciousness is a purely material phenomenon, which evolved through a process such as natural selection. However, this puts us in a tricky position. Why are we still assuming that our consciousness is able to grasp the truth about reality as a whole? Why would we trust our mind's reasoning that naturalism is true? If consciousness is merely a product of natural selection, it's motivated to produce whatever behaviors help us survive and reproduce, and whatever beliefs and thoughts support this. Natural selection doesn't care, so to speak, about what's true. It cares about what's advantageous for our survival and reproduction. Therefore, if our consciousness has helped us to come to the correct conclusions about reality, it's only because of the shocking coincidence that these conclusions are also the ones that help us survive and reproduce. Finally, Bentley Hart proposes that the naturalist position is unable to explain why nature exists at all. Nature can't explain the phenomenon of existence itself. Existence, he argues, is not a natural phenomenon because it is, in philosophical terms, logically prior to nature. My understanding of this is that nature can't be the cause of existence because in order to do so, it would need to already exist. Bentley Hart argues that the naturalist position can't account for the existence of nature at all. If you're interested in these arguments, and whichever side of the debate you agree with, I would recommend getting Bentley Hart's book, The Experience of God. Thanks to those who subscribed on the basis of my first video. Feel free to add a comment if you want me to make a video on any specific topic you're interested in, and I'll do my best. See you next time.